All right, welcome. We meet again. This is Luke, LukeHumphreyRunning.com, and do a little chat today. All right, so nothing crazy. I just want to talk about some heat and humidity stuff. We've been working on it, being more proactive in trying to get people to adjust. It's that time of year where people are ramping up their marathon training. And things are hard, right? Things are starting to we're kind of moved out of that easy phase. If you're in like the classic beginner plan, if you're in like the classic beginner plan, you're probably transitioning into your first speed workouts now. People in the advanced plan are probably well into the speed work, and pretty soon it's going to be August, right? So we gotta be make sure. So yeah, I was also thinking too. I need some good podcast intro music and some outro music, right? So I never really made this thing official. I don't even have episode numbers. That's crazy. All right, everybody, I listen to. I'm just not a professional podcaster. So I'm an occupational podcaster, like as an occupational runner. So. But let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about some stuff here. Let's see. I have some notes here. Now that if you're not aware, we do have the heat and humidity calculator. So if you've purchased a plan, even if you just have a Final Surge account, I believe you can access it. I think that's for everyone from Final Surge, so you can definitely get to it. I have it on my website as well. If you're a member in our website, which is join the community is free, and then on your dashboard there's a bunch of calculators. So, but I would definitely say this, the one on Final Surge, because we've had to tweak it a little bit over the years. So the training calculators. So I'll walk through that a little bit, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the heat and humidity calculator here. So, and I think, I was thinking about this, and I've been talking to my athletes a lot about it, and I've been talking to my athletes a lot about it, and I see it in our Facebook group a lot every year this time of year, and it's just always the same thing, right? Where it's hard. It's starting to creep in. We're like, I don't know how I'm going to run a marathon at this pace, and you know the drill. Like it's hard at this pace, and you know the drill. Like it's hard, right? And so, but on the other hand, though, they're like these runners are trying to force the issue, right? So like I'm looking out my window right now, you can just see the heat, right? It looks hot. It's 90 degrees. Humidity's at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it was already 75 degrees. The humidity was about 90%, and it's tough, right? And you can't expect your performance to be where you want it to be in October when you're dealing with conditions that are hopefully not what you're going to be racing in on race day. So, and I've said this on race day. So, and I've said this before, but it just always interesting to me where people think. I don't know. I almost think it's where they're trying to psych themselves up, like they're not tough enough if they can't run the pace, or they're not going to be able to, whatever the case is. But the truth of the matter is, like, it's pretty much everybody right now, and performance is going to suffer, right? Like it's not going to be your ideal performance condition. So it's hard to expect that to be perfect in your training as well. So. So I just want to go over some of that. So World Championships are in full swing, and the issue of the blocks with the sprinters has been a significant issue. And if you've watched any of the Diamond Leagues, it was the same thing. And even the Tokyo Games last year, I remember them having such problems with the blocks, and it was just like. They were so jumpy that they were measuring anything, and so my point with that is really just the idea that we've come to a point where we put all this reliance on technology and algorithm, put all this reliance on technology and algorithms, and we take that as like the end decision. Like with the poor hurdler, Alan, it was like clearly he wasn't, like, if you watched the video, he didn't move until everybody else moved, but yet he was charged with a false start because the computer said so, right? Like, and that just like, that's just an epitome of where we're at. Like, well, the computer said so, my Garmin said so, the algorithm said so. Like, sure, that's a great place to start, right? And it can give human judgment as well. And so that's why I want to talk about, because at the end of the day, it's an algorithm. It's not going to be perfect, and it's going to have its limitations. But what it can do is it can give you a starting point, and then you can take the things I'm going to talk about that I think you should consider, and then you can really put it into, well, very individualized for you too. So, and I think the biggest part too is going back to what I was saying is that people are so, they're tough and they're strong-willed, and they don't want to adjust. But I'm telling you right now, the athletes that I'm working with right now, I have a lot of new athletes right now, and they came in and they were kind of the same way. Like, they really didn't want to adjust, and I laid it out for them. And I can think of 3 or 4 of my athletes, like, I hate it, I don't like it, but I'm trusting you. And they're adjusting, but their workouts are going so much better. They're doing better on their hydration and their fueling, and they don't feel like they've gone into the well, right? They've had a day or two where that hasn't felt great, but I mean, that's to be expected, in the course of 60 days, if you have 2 days that don't feel great. I'd say that's pretty good odds there. But the truth is, like, I think that they're going to be pretty darn successful in the fall because they're not putting themselves in a position where they're digging a hole every day just a little bit more, just can't get out of. And you're going to see that soon. Like, you're going to see, I'm already seeing it with people in the Facebook group where they're talking about how they're already feeling cumulative fatigue. If they're feeling cumulative fatigue, right, well, let's be blunt, that's not cumulative fatigue. That's you being way too aggressive and not adjusting paces, trying to force the issue, and really just overtraining at that point. Like, cumulative fatigue should not be set in yet, right? Like, cumulative fatigue, and I have blog posts about that as well, but you really shouldn't be that until you're like, 6, 8, or 10 weeks out. And most of you are like 4 to 6 weeks into a plan where you still have a good 3 months to go. So if you're already feeling that and you're already questioning yourself, this is the first thing I'd look at is, are you adjusting? Are you willing to adjust? Or are you just going to stick to that and just hope for the best when you get to, September and October? So that's allow you to train hard. And if you can have some faith that your fitness is still growing, and let go of the idea that pace is equal to intensity, which in this situation it's not. Pace is not equal to intensity. Your pace is going to be disproportionate to what actual intensity. 60% of your VO2 max is now a pace that's going to be 75% of your VO2 max because of the weather. And those are the biggest things. So if you can let go of all that and just kind of recognize that fitness is more about how the effort is matching the intensity, that's where your fitness really lies. And so, matching the intensity, that's where your fitness really lies. And so, so I'll stop rambling about that. But that's the biggest thing. I think it'll save your segment if you can make those adjustments. So, things to consider when you're using the calculator. So, so the first thing I would say is where you live is going to make a big difference, right? So I had a conversation where you live is going to make a big difference, right? So I had a conversation with one of my athletes who is in Texas, and then I was telling her about another one of my athletes who lives in South Florida, and she was like, well, that's a totally different world because, Texas is hot. South Florida's hot and even nastier with the humidity. Where you're at is going to play a big role in here. And so, like I always, because you'll get to April or May, start warming up here in Michigan, and so you say that about anybody with the Great Lakes region or the Midwest region, North New England, whatever. There's a lot of places like that in the around the world days, and people are just so affected by it, right? And then you'll always have somebody comment, well, this is what it's like all the time in Florida. It's like, well, yeah, but that's my point. You're used to it, right? You run every day and it's pretty much the same weather within, let's say 10 to 20 degrees. You get into April and May, and I'm just speaking for Michigan because that's where I've lived for 40 years, is, April and May, I can have a day where it's 30 and later in the afternoon, it's 75 degrees. You can have weeks where we'll have a snow day in school, and by the end of the week, your kids are going to school in shorts, right? There's even times now in June and July where it'll be in the 90s during the day, but if I go out in the morning, it's in the 50s, right? It's a very comfortable run. Like, I'm wearing a shirt, I'm fine, right? And it's by 3 o'clock, it's in the 90s, right? So when you're in those big variations of temperatures, it's going to take you a lot longer to adjust. And the amount that's going to affect you is probably going to be a lot more than somebody who lives in Miami or lives in Houston. Like, they're going to be more used to the warm, even though I've been in Houston in January and it's been 45 degrees. But my point is, like, you're going to have those less variations in temperature, and you're going to have much more time spent in those warm and humid temperatures, right? And so if you are that person, then it's still going to take its toll. I don't think you can go into it and say, well, it's not going to affect me at all. It definitely will. It's just that if you're so used to it being 70, like, that's your baseline, right? But then you go somewhere where it's 45, 50 degrees, and you're going to feel like you're walking on water. You're going to feel amazing, right? So you have to take it for what it is. But that's my point. Like, I went out for a run and it was in the low 50s, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's kind of cold, but that just means it's going to take more time to acclimate, and so you have to spend more time doing that. The other thing I think you have to consider is your training status. So if you're relatively unfit, the toll of the heat and humidity is going to be a lot higher than somebody who, say, 6-8 weeks into a training program. The toll of the heat and humidity is going to be a lot higher than somebody who, say, 6-8 weeks into a training program, and so that you're going to go through that big adjustment period where you're increasing your sweat rate, your heart rate's through the roof, all these things, and you're just going to be fatigued more. It's going to take a toll, and you're going to have to slow down more. It's going to take a toll, and you're going to have to slow down more early on than somebody who's farther along into a program. The other thing I think you'd consider on that same note would be how much time you're outside. So if you're a person who's doing mostly 30 to 45 minute runs outside, then they're not going to acclimate as fast as somebody day running outside in those same conditions, right? So eventually the first person will acclimate, but it's just going to potentially take longer than the second person who's in it a lot longer, right? So if you're doubling up the time that you're out in it and exercising in it, you're going to shorten the time it's going to take to acclimate. So, because I've got blog posts on heat acclimation, 7 to 14 days where you really start to feel the acclimation take place. And that's all based on, 90 minutes of activity outside, right? And if you're not doing that, then obviously that 14 days can turn into 21 days, longer than that even, it's hard to say, but you will have a longer adjustment period. And then the third thing I would say you have to consider is what you're training for. So, my calculator is weighted for different runs, right? So for faster runs, repeats, and some even really threshold runs, you're going to probably be less affected than like marathon tempos and long runs and things that you're out there for just really long amount of time. And so it's going to take a lot more. It's going to be more effective on you than doing like 5K. Doing 400s at 5K pace is going to have less effect on your performance than doing an 8-mile tempo run at marathon pace at a temperature that's 75, 80% humidity. That's going to be two totally different things. Like that those 400s might not even need to be adjusted, whereas the tempo run is probably going to have to be a little bit adjusted. And then the last thing I think you have to consider is body size. And so to me, a perfect example of this is during the 2008 Beijing Games. And the predictions for the men's marathon were going to be, they were slow, 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 slow. They were saying, I mean, it was crazy. Like the commentators were saying, oh, 211's going to win it, 214's going to win it, 220's going to win it, because it was just so hot and humid. And then they were thinking about Iwan Giro, rest his soul. You know, he was like 5'2", 110 pounds, just this little guy. And he was, you know, he was the best marathoner in the world at that point. He was probably one of the best. I mean, if he were still alive, I would probably put him up against Kipchoge. I think incredible. And he was gone way before his prime. I think he died when he was like 25 or 26, but he was very, very young. But in any case, he took the pace out, and he took it out hot, you know, literally, figuratively. It was hot. It was a hot pace. Nobody went with him. All the commentators are like, it's over. He's going to fade. He's not even going to finish. They're like, it's over. He's going to fade. He's not even going to finish. All this stuff. And then it got to 25K. And then he got to 30K. And he got to 35K. And the man wasn't slowing down. He ended up running the Olympic record. He destroyed the Olympic record. He beat it by a ton. And he won by minutes. Like, it wasn't even close. That was due to his body size. Like, if you're not, you know, lugging around a lot of extra weight, you know, like I've always struggled in the heat, but I'm, you know, for a, you know, an air quotes professional marathoner, I was 5'11", 150 pounds. It's a pretty big guy when you compare yourself to the Kenyans and a lot of the other marathoners. Like, you know, there was a lot of the other marathoners. Like, you know, there was a pretty big guy. Like Jason Hartman he was a 211 guy. I don't know. He did amazing. He was a big guy. Like, you know, he was like 6'2" and probably at least 150 or 160. And, you know, I don't know how he was able to do it, but in general, like, the smaller you are and you have power to weight ratio, you're going to be much more successful because you're not carrying around the extra weight, and you have less surface area to collect heat and, you know, to absorb that sun and that heat, right? So if you are a smaller person, you tend to be able to be closer to those paces is what I'm not. There's nothing, you can't like get shorter, right? Like that's not going to happen, but it can guide you when you are adjusting your paces. Like if you're a pretty petite person, it's probably not going to affect you as, you know, a guy who's 6'5" and, you know, 275 pounds, right? Like that heat's not going to affect you the same, right? And so that's the point with it. But that's the thing, I said that you can take these things into account and really look at how you want to adjust, right? And so how I use it with athletes is, you know, when they come in, we're talking about it, and, you know, the first thing we do is we plug it into the calculator, and they have it, and, you know, the first thing we do is we plug it into the calculator, and they have a good idea of what because they know on average it's, you know, 70 degrees when I run, 80% humidity, blah, blah, blah. And that spits out their adjusted training paces, you know, from easy to recovery all the way to sprinting pace adjustment. So let me just let me just go into, I'll just pull this up real quick and kind of walk you through it, even though you can't see it. But I'm logged into Final Surge. So my calendar's up on it, and I'm on a laptop, right? You can find this calculator in an app, but I would say for ease of use, do this on top, right? So if I'm logged in, I'm on the beta platform of Final Surge. I go to, there's on the far right, you have your weekly totals, and then you have these 4 icons. You have this workout library, printer report, calculators, and workout display settings. So if you go to calculators, you click that, and then Tin Man and Palladino. Of course you want Hansen's because there really are no other, they're all substitutes, right? Like it's the one. No, just kidding. So go to Hansen's, and then you will see a little box there, and then it says enter race time or goal time below. So let's just say your goal marathon. Enter race time or goal time below. So let's just say your goal marathon. We're going to say 3:30. Let's just say your time is 3:30. All right, and then below that box, you have heat, humidity, and wind chill adjustments. So you have temperature. You can toggle that between Fahrenheit and Celsius, humidity, and then do anything with that right now. I'm just going to calculate my paces for 3:30. So 3:30 is 8-minute pace, right? So that would be my tempos. But if you scroll down, you have recent race information, which is your marathon goal time, and then you have training paces. Easy pace, moderate, long run, speed workouts, VO2 max workouts, LT, strength max workouts, LT, strength, half marathon tempos, and strides. So obviously our pace for the The tempos is 8-minute pace if our goal pace is 8 minutes. All right, so let's adjust this stuff. So I'm gonna scroll back up and I'm gonna say, I run in the morning, in the summer, it's 70, and it's 80% humidity, which is pretty common for me right now. And I'm gonna recalculate those paces. And so now I get a new box. I said recent race information, and it's in green, and it says my marathon, it says 8-minute pace. And then below that, it says an adjusted race time. So from 3:30, based on the weather conditions I put in, it says 3:30 is 10-minute difference, right? Which is a big chunk. So that per pace wise, that's 8:14 to 8:24. So we're about 15 to 25 seconds slower than our goal time. And so below that, you'll have another box in blue that says training paces adjusted. So this will all give you all the heat adjusted paces. All right, so then maybe you make note of that, whatever the case is. But so 5:14 to 5:25. 8:15 to 8:25 is basically my new marathon pace. All right, so I'm looking at one of my athletes here, and this is a previous workout. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to open up. So if I'm in the beta platform, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to open up. So if I'm in the beta platform, and you have your calendar laid out for you. So I'm hitting this workout. It's a run pace. It's a run marathon workout for her. Workout builder. Open that up, and then I'm gonna edit that. So I open that up, and it's got the whole structure. I'm gonna edit that. So I open that up, and it's got the whole structure of the workout for her. So I can use that new information now. I can, if I click on, so I'm looking at the workout, and it's all boxed together. So I'm just going to adjust one of these. As a run distance is 2 miles. That I'm going to go to. I'm just going to change this for this one. I'm going to X that out. I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to change it. You'll have, and then when I delete it, I'll have 3 options. I'll have pace target, pace zone target, and percent threshold pace. So I'm going to go to pace target, and I'm going to just put that new pace in. I went to 8:24 per mile, and then that'll automatically adjust my structured workout. And I would do that to whatever steps I want to do that to. And then I save that workout, and I can push that right to my Garmin, right? So if you're a person who uses the structured workouts, that's the easiest thing you can do to do. You can just go in there, change the workout. Some of my athletes don't really use the structured workout features, but they'll have that noted, and that's the paces they'll try to keep that into. So those are the easiest ways to do it, right? And that's super easy. That took me, 5 seconds to do, right? That's nothing. We can totally do that. The last thing on that is where people tend to get confused with. So let's open that back. I want to, if I open that window back up, the workout calculators, I'm going to go back to marathon 3:30, because I feel like the faster stuff is marathon 3:30, because I feel like the faster stuff is pretty self-explanatory, right? And people don't usually have a problem with that. They adjust the pace, they do what it says, off they go. Where people tend to have problems is more in the range of the easy runs and the longer runs. So I'm just going to recalculate that at 3:30 pace. So this says my easy pace is basically easy and moderate is 9:15 to 10:50 adjusted for, see if I can remember those numbers. Basically 9:15, let's say 9:15 to 11-minute pace adjusted. If they're not adjusted, those paces are basically 9 to 10:30. So they're essentially the same range. You only got about a fifth, right? That's going to be slower. And sometimes people will tend to, it's about 30 seconds on the slow end. But 10:30 to 11-minute pace is a big difference, right? And so if you're adjusting those easy paces, sometimes they're too slow, and then you want to be easy paces. Sometimes they're too slow, and then you want to be careful, right? So if there's a big range, so if you're a person who tends to be on the faster side of their easy and moderate pace, and they see this, it's going to put them on the slower side of everything, right? And so it might be too slow, like, yeah, so shuffling your feet now and you're not actually taking a full stride. We don't want that. We don't want to change your stride, right? Like, we don't want to cause an injury because we're making you slow down so much and lose in efficiency because you're slowing down so much and you're changing your stride. So in that case, I would just say run what's comfortable. It's probably going to be slower, but it's still what's comfortable. It's probably going to be slower, but it's still probably also going to be in your normal range anyway. So it's not something that I would worry about. So if you find yourself altering your stride to force yourself to go so slow on the easy runs, and even in the long runs, if you slow yourself down so much, it's going to actually probably be worse for you. Natural, and you finish the run, you don't fade off in the long run or anything like that. Just keep it what it is, run naturally, right? And that's where the kind of that human judgment comes into play. It's like, well, don't go just because the pace told me to go basically do a walk. I'm now going so slow that I'm basically doing a walk run. Well, no, we don't really want to do that either. We want you to run naturally, and if that natural, then that's what it is, right? You'll be fine, right? And that's where I think people tend to overdo it a little bit. But the biggest thing for me is that anything at intensity, so anything marathon pace or faster, really take some serious look at it, adjusting it, right? And so that's the big thing. So now leads me to the question is, how do I progress this, right? And so as summer goes on, how do you know when it's time to progress? When can I move those paces up a little bit? And so there's really a few ways. One is that if you're using your current pace and you're going to adjust it incrementally, then just move your paces along at the same increment. So, right. So if you're gonna, paces along at the same increment. So, right. So if you're gonna, start at, if you're gonna start with a goal time of 8 minutes, use that 8-minute pace for reference, and your best is 8:20, then you're going to probably start with the 8:20 and try to work it up to the 8-minute miles, taking a few seconds off that pace every 6 weeks or so. And so what you can do is you can still kind of go with that mentality. Maybe go from 8:20 to 8:15 after a few weeks, and then adjust the 8:15 paces, and then go to 8:10 and adjust the 8:10 paces, the heat and humidity, all that good stuff, right? The second way is, and this is probably more in conjunction rather than a second way, but is to really keep a good log. So track RPE, how hard it felt. If you're running the same paces and it went from feeling like an 8 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10, then you're adjusting well, and you can probably bump up the pace a little bit. And here's also a great opportunity for heart. If you're doing a tempo run every Thursday and that heart rate got real high at the start, and now after a few weeks that heart rate's coming down, we know that you're adjusting to the workload, and the paces will probably can move the paces down a little bit. Then the biggest thing I will say is and this is probably the easiest thing, is that the paces themselves will just start coming down, right? So let's just continue on with the 8-minute mile example. You have a goal of 8-minute miles. Let's say your adjusted pace is 8:20. You start at 8:20s and it feels hard to slow down and run 8:20s, right? And that kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. So don't adjust your goal time, but adjust your pace based on that effort. So if that pace is now 8:10 to 8:15, but it's the same effort, and you're still doing the workout, you're not fading drastically at the end of the workout, you're recovering for the next thing that you have to do, all systems are go, then just roll with that natural pace. Your body will tell you where it's at, right? And so that is probably the easiest way. And that's why I stress so much is learn what the effort feels like, and then the pace will naturally come. So if you're in a tempo, you're just only looking at the watch, then you're going to be solely stuck on whatever that adjusted pace is. But if you go in there and you know what that effort feels like, and right now that effort's 8:20 pace, but in like 2 or 3 weeks, maybe it's 8:17 pace, but it's the same effort, and you're not so concerned with what the watch is saying that I'm at 8:17s. You're not so hung up on all this data that you're not listening to what your body's telling you to. And that's such a huge skill to have. It takes a ton of practice. It takes a long time, especially if you've never really done it before, but it's one of the skills you have to have if you really, really want to be successful and really kind of get the most out, because you'll learn how far you can push, and then and you can tell when you need to back it off, right? Instead of just pushing because that's what the watch is telling me I have to do, right? And so that's a big, big skill to have. All right. So all that said, how do I know when I'm really ready to go? And I get it, right? So like how am I supposed to run pace X when I feel all out, and pace Y doesn't feel good, right? Like it's tough, right? It's not very good for our psyche. It's not good for our confidence. And it can wreak havoc on if we're really ready to go or not. And so here's the way I look at it. I say, if I'm running the October marathon, personally, I feel like you're going to get a 50-50 shot at the weather. It could be beautiful. It could be nasty, right? I've run Chicago a ton of times. I've run Chicago in the snow. I've run Chicago in 80-degree weather, right? In the same weekend, different year, right? So I feel like you're kind of rolling the dice here, right? So I feel like you're kind of rolling the dice on those September and early October marathons. The later you get into late October, early November, first part of December, I feel like your chances on weather go drastically up in your favor. But if I get a hot day, I know what I can do. I know what I can't do. If I get a screamer of a day, it's going to be like on a downhill course. So I'm still probably not necessarily going to completely trust myself, but it's also going to force me to go out slower, what I've kind of been doing in training. And then, if I'm really ready, so it's ultimately going to force me into an ideal racing strategy situation that I can ultimately take advantage of the weather and all that good stuff, and my fitness, because the fitness is there. It's just been suppressed all summer, right? Going back to my Chicago experience, I would say, what would happen for me is I'd get a day, say early September, mid-September, anywhere from 3, 4 to 6 weeks out from the race, and would get a really good day. We'd get a day where it was like 50 degrees, no wind. We were out at Stony, and it was just a day for us to take, right? And I would go in there, you're tired from all the training, you're not expecting very fast, and you just kind of let the workout happen, and you'd fly. And it'd be like flipping a switch, right? Flipping a white light switch. It'd be like from going from dark to light, and it would be amazing, right? And you'd have this realization like, oh my God, the fitness is there. I'm actually really fit, right? It was just hidden all summer under the heat and humidity, but now I know it's there. But I would say this: the trick is you've got to bottle that and save it, because a lot of people will get that workout, and they'll push harder, right? They're like, okay, now I got to make up for lost time. No. You've already made up the lost time. It was actually never lost. It was always there. You just didn't see it. Now you've actually got a glimpse at where your fitness is truly at. So now is the time to just stay the course and let the fitness bottle that, save that for race day. In July and August, they ultimately come up short because they may push in hard and hit those paces early on, and their confidence might be intact in June and July, maybe into August, but by the time they get to September, they're tired. They're really tired. A lot of them, they're hanging on by a thread, and they might have it because they're already too tired. They've already spent what they had, and it's just not there. And so then you start seeing those comments where, how am I supposed to run 16 more miles at this pace? And the truth is you probably can't, because you've already dug that hole so deep that you're not going to get out of it, right? Because you're going to now, because it's like a cycle, like they do that. So then the thing is, well, I got to push harder. And they ultimately either end up barely hanging on and barely making it to the starting line. They're on the verge of just being really overtrained, or they're sick, or they're hurt, or all three, or a combination. They're sick, or they're hurt, or all three, or a combination of those things, and it makes it a really tough spot to be in. So it's hard for those people, and it's hard to you feel empathy for those people because they have worked really hard. I feel like it was always just put in the wrong place because they were so worried about hitting that time in June and July when it's like they got to the point where it really mattered and it's not there, right? So I think that's what you have to weigh too, is do I want to hit those paces now when it doesn't matter, or do I want to allow my fitness to adjust to the weather that's given me and be ready to roll, 6-8 weeks before the race and really be able to put that final stretch where everything is race specific, have that be my best part of the segment. Because what's going to give you more confidence, right? Like if you're tired, but you're nailing the 10-mile tempos, you're doing well on the 16-mile long runs, the strengths are going well. Like that's going to give you more confidence than whether or not you hit the 12x400 at 5 to 10K pace, right? Because that was months ago, right? And you haven't done it since, right? So that's the things you have to really, really consider. All right, so that's my thoughts, more thoughts on the heat adjustment. I will say this, so there is also a video. If you purchase a schedule from us, if you're in the community, even if you're just in the community, I believe it's access because it's a free course. Let me look at my website real quick, but I'm pretty sure that it is open. So you'll see a couple of courses. You'll see basically navigating the LHR community and Final Surge 101. So Final Surge 101, there's a lesson in there called Adjusting Your Paces that has everything, pretty much everything I talked about and explained on here. You could see it in live action and get an idea of how to put that into your calendar. Even if you're just making your own idea of how to put that into your calendar, even if you're just making your own workouts, right? Like you can use that to go on for some data input. All right. So with that, I hope you got something out of this. I think just showing you how I use it, how I use it with my just showing you how I use it, how I use it with my athletes, how you can take an algorithm and really individualize it to your own situation. Hopefully you can put some of this to use, and if you've kind of gone over that edge, correct it now. And if you've stayed that course as far as adjusting, just have so many of you are going to have monster falls this year. And the big thing is just take it for what it is. And it's like when I talk about this, I'm talking really about my calculations. I'm talking about Garmin IQ stuff, whatever the case is. Take it for what it is. Don't be afraid to tweak it and make it custom for you, because at the end of the day, or a piece of technology, right? And so the technology is great and it's going to give you a ton of information, but you've got to take in all the data, whether it's from technology or internal awareness, whatever the case is. It all has to be merged together to make the best decision for you, and so that you can maximize what you're going to get out of your great week. And we'll do this again sometime. All right, I'll talk to you later.